Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. And we're getting ready to do our autumn 2024 update. And we're going to cover a bunch of different topics tonight. But to get started, I have to, of course, pass along the unfortunate news. As those of you that follow us on Facebook are already aware, my good friend, my brother from another mother, and co creator, co host, of the Soul of the Unexplained, Mr. Roger Stokes, regrettably is still not feeling well, and at the present time of the recording of this podcast, I'm sorry to say that he's actually in the hospital right now. So those of you that are friends of Roger and that know Roger, hopefully you'll join me in sending some prayers and healing vibes and positive thoughts to Roger, and hoping for his quick and speedy recovery. And so joining me today, instead of having Roger here, we've got a very, very dear friend of mine and my former, I can't say former because, well, it's just the wrong word to use. And I'm just, I haven't slept enough. So you can probably tell I'm going to be making a lot of mistakes tonight, folks. But my bandmate, my hitchhiker bandmate, Mr. John Neiberger, the legend of the bass, as I like to call him. And John is joining me tonight instead of Roger. And John, I am so happy and excited to have you here because it's always a party when I have you joining us here on the Soul of the Unexplained. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I miss Roger. It's always better with Roger here. But yes, it's I absolutely always love being here. So this will be a fun night.
Yes, it's always better with Roger, and I definitely miss Roger's sense of humor, and he always has a way of throwing me off and making me laugh from time to time. And don't
Mhm.
even get me started on when Roger and I were in the same band together. We would always, during rehearsal, we'd kind of substitute our own lyrics for different songs, and Roger was really bad at that. And so one time during an actual performance that my band had, Roger looked at me, and for some reason, my mind went to the made up lyrics. I sung them live. I was so mortified. I was so embarrassed, and Roger just nearly pissed himself because he was laughing so hard. So, Roger, we definitely miss you, and we know that you're here with us in spirit, and we can't wait for you to be back in the saddle with us again, and just wish you a speedy recovery. And
Yeah.
John, how about those Broncos, man? Your Broncos are going up, and my Raiders are tanking.
Yeah, man, this weekend was I guess Thursday, really. Thursday night. That was a weird game, man. Weird game. I mean, it turned out well, but there were some spots that were not pretty.
Mm.
I think Bo Nix it's a little rough, but yeah, knock on wood, I think he can get it ironed out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your quarterback situation looks a heck of a lot better than the current quarterback situation for the Raiders, let me tell you.
Yeah, man, I don't know what's going on with your team.
It's ugly. It's really
I
I
mean, I'm
mean,
a
more.
Bronco fan, and I wish the Raiders were better than they are right now.
Well, let's be honest. The NFL is just more interesting when both the Raiders and the Broncos are competitive.
Yeah, I
And
agree. I agree.
we're both, I mean, I think both of our teams are still trying to find that competitive edge. We've got positive things that happen for each team. The Raiders still have Max Crosby, who's just a beastly
We see.
defensive end, and the
See.
Broncos, you guys are starting to show some results, and
The
for the
defense is
first time
crazy.
in a while, the Raiders are replacing you at the basement of the AFC West. So, but anyhow, so folks, we're not here to talk about football. We're here to talk about a number of different things. We're just going to kind of give a little our little observation on some of the hot topics that are currently going on within the realm of, we'll say, the UFO and UAP topic, because that's one of my favorite things to talk about. And as we get started, I just want to preface all of our comments by saying neither John or I are what we would call conspiracy theorists. And I've said it a number of times on the Soul of the Unexplained here. One of the things that's always historically bothered me about the UFO and UAP topic is how many people just automatically jump to the ET hypothesis, as they call it. And I, you know, I accept the fact that, some of these things may very well be an explanation that involves extraterrestrial or off-world civilizations. But to me, it's not the most likely. Possible, yes. Probable, maybe. Don't know. So bear that in mind, folks. I'm not one of these people that looks at these things and inherently goes, "Oh, it's aliens, it's extraterrestrials," because quite frankly, we don't know. We can speculate all we want, and that's really at the end of the day all that I'm going to be able to do, and all that John can do, because none of us have firsthand knowledge. So, what you're going to hear tonight is just my observation, my opinion, and same with John. So we're going to talk about the direction that we see this topic going, and what some of the bigger news points have been in the last couple of weeks. Because this is the first episode of the Soul of the Unexplained since we did our Phenomicon review last month, John. If you can believe that, I mean, it's already been
Yeah.
over it's a month and a half since we've done anything here on the Soul of the Unexplained. So to get started, I figure one of the big things that's going to be coming up this next month in November, November 13th to be precise, is John, there's going to be another UAP public hearing before the House of Representatives. And I believe it's once again the House Select Committee on Intelligence, if I'm not mistaken. And this time, it's going to be Representative Nancy Mace, I believe, who is going to be conducting, or at least is the one who's organizing this and trying to pull it all together. So, the only thing that we know about it so far, and to their credit, they are not going public with who the witnesses are that are going to be called to the stand. So we don't
Right.
know if we're going to see Fravor, Graves, or Grush again. We don't know if we're going to see somebody like a Lou Elizondo or anybody else that's currently in the hot names of people that are out there that have things to say and to offer their perspective from an insider's point of view, if you will. So what are some things that maybe you are looking to perhaps get out of this next congressional hearing?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. I think it's also I think it's a oversight committee, not
Ah,
intelligence, I
ah,
believe.
okay,
Um, but I agree with what you said. They're keeping the witness list quiet. They're keeping it under wraps because last time, as I recall, some of the names leaked ahead of time, and I believe it was the Air Force told those guys, no, you can't go, don't go. So they didn't even show up. So they had some witnesses that backed out at the last minute because of pressure, from the whatever organization they were in. I think it was Air Force.
mhm,
So maybe by keeping these names under wraps, they can avoid some of that. I believe it was Nancy Mace. I think I heard her say that they picked this date specifically for one of the witnesses because that's when this person was available. And I believe it's a military witness. I don't know if it's current or former, probably current, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how that would even work if it was current. I'm not sure. But that I think I'm mostly just interested to see how is it going to be different from last time? Are they going to be asking better, more informed questions? And are they going to be a little more incisive and go into a little bit more depth? Are they going to continue the bipartisanship that we saw last time that still absolutely blows my mind? I've never seen Congress be so bipartisan about anything, or maybe even nonpartisan is a better way to phrase it.
right.
So I'm looking forward to that. Um, I don't know that I expect much to come from it because it's an open hearing. So the juicy stuff that we probably really want to hear couldn't happen in an open hearing, but you never know.
Right, and that's actually a perfect way to set it up. That I will say that I think it behooves everybody to temper their expectations, because while this last hearing that we had back in 2023 with Fravor, Graves, and Grush was historic in every sense of the word. And uh, while there may not have been an awful lot of amazing stuff that came out of it for those of us that already follow the topic, because all the really bombshell stuff had already come out previously in the News Nation interview that David Grush had done. So what this was last time was under oath and sworn testimony in front of the American people. And that was just extraordinary. That in and of itself was historically significant. But as far as anything new and shocking that wasn't already revealed via the interview that Ross Coulthart had done with David Grush about a month or so prior to the congressional hearing last year, there wasn't really a lot from what I recall that was like, whoa, wow, I didn't know that. So I think this time it's going to be pretty much the same kind of thing, with the exception, as we've said, there's going to be new witnesses called. They are purposely holding those cards very close to the chest because, as you said, John, there were plenty of reports last time of witness intimidation, is what it was alleged to be. In other words, whether it was the Air Force, the CIA, wherever these witnesses, whatever organization or military branch of service that these witnesses were being called from, uh, the understanding was that there had been an immense amount of pressure put on them by the heads of these organizations to say, basically, if you know what's good for you, you're not going to go to the to Capitol Hill to testify under oath.
Yep.
Which technically, if these witnesses have already filed for whistleblower protection, they can't do that. They can't legally tell them no, you can't go, because if they want to do that, and now they can certainly, as David Grush said, the term that he used was administrative terrorism, where they
Yeah.
were going after him, threatening to take away, the big thing is threatening to take away your security clearances, um, you know, make it so that your upward mobility in whatever career path you've chosen gets halted. Um, those kind of things are and should be seen as retaliatory measures taken against somebody who is being called before Congress to testify. So there needs to be more teeth. There needs to be more aggressiveness on the part of the House of Representatives and whoever it is, even the Senate. I would say, to whenever there's pushback, the members of Congress need to flex their muscle and show that these organizations that are trying to prevent people from coming forward and telling their stories, um, there's already a pathway for them to do that, and they cannot and should not obstruct and obfuscate these opportunities and uh, keep these people, repressed, because they want to intimidate them. So that, I think, is exactly and precisely why we don't know who all the witnesses are that are going to be testifying. So I'm hoping, my biggest hope is that we get to see more than one new witness, more than one person coming forward who has a story, preferably firsthand knowledge, because we're getting to the point now where people are saying, okay, these claims that were made by Grush were extraordinary. They are, mind blowing, but here we are over a year later, almost a year and a half, almost 18 months later, and there's been no action taken. There's been no other new real incidents or news items to really move the needle forward, you would say. And I think the people that say that are right. So hopefully we get new witnesses and we get new information, or at least we get more corroborating testimony that is, under oath, because it's one thing for somebody to say it on a news program or on a podcast. When you're under oath and giving that testimony before Congress and therefore the American people, it carries a lot more gravity and a lot more weight when you give a testimony under those kind of circumstances and in that kind of a setting. So Am I going to hold my breath that we're going to get the smoking gun, as it were? I don't think so. I don't think we're going to get anywhere close for the very reason that you mentioned, John, which is all the really good stuff, they're only going to be able to tell Congress in a closed session in a skiff, um, if they can tell them at all, right? So,
Mhm. Yep.
but
And the nice thing about that is one of the nice things about the Grush testimony was that they did ask some questions where he said, I can't tell you that in an open hearing. Put me in a skiff. I'll give you a list of names. I'll give you a list. I'll tell you whatever you want to know in a skiff, in a closed, session. So even if we get that same type of thing, if it's someone else with different sources, different experience that are kind of corroborating a lot of these same stories,
right,
that is, I mean, maybe it's not quite as historic as the first time it happened, but that's still a big deal. And if they also say, look, hey, get me in a closed hearing, get me in a skiff, I'll give you all the details you want to hear that I can give you. And that says a lot, because like if it's under oath, that's different than just someone on a podcast or in an article saying, yeah, I heard this, or I know this, and such and such is true. Who cares? You go in front of Congress and swear to tell the truth. That's a little more weighty.
yeah,
So I think we can put a little more stock into what we hear. But again,
right,
like you said,
exactly,
don't get your hopes up too much.
right. It's it's something that we should be celebrating because it's happening.
Correct.
We should hold our congressional representatives accountable for if for some reason they find a reason not to do it, like if it gets the kibosh put on it at the last minute. Those are the times when you want to start calling your representatives and saying, "Hey, this is important. This is something that we need to do." And to that end, I applaud the fact that Representative Mace, and again, folks, I am not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I'm a proud registered independent. I have no dog in the fight as far as politics goes. I think that both sides are equally corrupt, and you got more than enough clowns on both sides of the aisle. So that's all that I'll say about that. But whether the people involved are Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, progressive, does not matter because as we were talking before we began recording, John, this is a topic that has bipartisan,
Mhm.
nonpartisan, I guess
Yeah.
some would say, where it's one of the few topics and issues that really stretches and completely erases the party boundaries because everybody wants to know. And while we understand that there has to be certain secrets that our nation has to maintain for our own security and for our own well-being as a sovereign nation. And anybody that says otherwise, just you're stupid to think otherwise. That we have to that we have a right to know all of our nation's secrets because we don't. And quite frankly, I don't want to know some of the secrets. But something as monumental as this, something that would redefine not only our current accepted understanding of our place in the universe, and even perhaps even on our own planet. If we are not alone, if there is another intelligent, technologically advanced civilization that has either already visited our planet or that is currently visiting, then we have a right to know. And that would fall under what I would say, and again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm no political expert, I don't hold a degree in political science, but that would fall under the one of the main points of the United States Constitution, which is we all have certain inalienable rights, which would be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so if there's a secret like this that could hold the very possibility of defining what we view as reality, and our government knows it, or any other government on the face of the earth is privy to this and knows that this is, completely changes everything overnight, they don't have a right to keep that from us. They don't have a right to control what is and is not quote unquote reality. So to that end, we do have a right to know. And I think we are ready to know. Are there people out there that are not going to be ready to accept this information if, and again, folks, it's a mighty big if because we don't know, but assuming that these people that have been coming forward with these testimonies, that there is evidence of another civilization having made contact with human beings, not just here in the United States, but all over the planet. And especially when you take into account, folks, the fact that there are accounts going back to ancient scripture times. And I'm not just talking Christianity and Judaism. We're talking the ancient Hindu texts of these things that we would call what would fit into the classification of a UFO or a UAP. So this is not something that has just been around for the last 70 or 80 years. This is a phenomena that has been present on planet Earth for an awful long time. All the ancient cultures
Hmm.
talk and have depictions about things like this. So there's always a little bit of truth in every myth and legend, right? So if that's the case, and again, I fully accept it's a mighty big if, but if any of these details are true and we have been contacted by another civilization, or even if we've been living alongside one all this time, whether they're extraterrestrial, crypto terrestrial, or ultra terrestrial, interdimensional, whatever the case may be. But if they do in fact exist, and if in fact they have been to our planet or are currently here, we have a right to know. And, you know, I'm one of those people that would rather know if it's even the worst case scenario, even if it happens to completely disprove everything I've ever believed about religion and spirituality, I still would like to know what we're dealing with, whether it's good or bad. And I think most people probably share that same sentiment. Am I how do you feel about that?
Oh, I don't know about most.
Well,
I think there's a couple billion people I think that probably would not like
well,
that level of
I'm a
uh
Raiders fan, so I can speak for everybody, right? No, no, you're
yeah,
absolutely right. And it's
yeah,
not
what's the
most
term for
people.
that they keep using? It just slipped my mind. Um oh, when your worldview completely gets shattered. But the
Ontological shock.
ontological shock, yes.
Mhm.
Ontological shock. Yeah, I think you and I and people like us are sort of prepared. I still don't even think I'm 100% prepared. Like I think I am, but if it actually comes down to it and we're like, hey, yep, they're actually here. We have evidence. Here's what's been going on. Sorry, we've been keeping this from you. You know, there's going to be an adjustment period, and that's for the people that are prepared for it. There's going to be a lot of people that they're going to lose their minds.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can kind of see why you would want to keep something like that secret. But on the other hand, unless there is a very good reason for them keeping it secret, it should it should become public. I mean,
But then again, you're getting into the hair splitting of what is a quote unquote very good reason,
oh, true.
right?
Oh,
Because
true. Oh, that's
because
true. Yeah.
because for the people that hold the worldview that there is a God in the universe and we are creations of God. He is our Father in heaven, whatever you want to call it, whether it's Christian, Judeo, Muslim, we all kind of share that same basic premise that there is a supreme being who was our creator. And regardless of what you call him, regardless of what denomination, and you've also got a lot of people out there that are not, don't subscribe to any of those beliefs, that are atheists, that are agnostic, that are, you know, whatever the case may be. Um, there, quite obviously, there's very understandable reasons for why, if it's a worst case scenario type of thing where, where, as some people allege, we are nothing more than a farm animal experiment, right?
Hmm.
Humanity. And that we are not at all at the top of the food chain. Um, there's a lot of people that, if in fact that ends up being the case, and that all religions are wrong, and everybody's got, everything is, furthest from the truth, and we really are, a subject of an experiment of some kind, um, I can see how that would be really difficult pill to swallow. I
Mhm.
mean, I say I'm ready, but if that ended up being the case, holy crap, what
Well, what if they tell you that there are aliens or hybrid aliens living among us right now, and they look just like humans, and you can't tell the difference? And they
uh
can read your mind, and they can make you see and believe and hear and remember things that didn't actually happen. Good luck. What if they
watch
tell you that, right?
Grammy Awards. Just go and watch any of the Grammy Awards.
That's a good point.
You'll see all the evidence that you need to know about that.
Right, right.
But no,
But
seriously,
that would be tough for some people to handle.
it totally would.
That's kind
Absolutely.
of crazy.
Well,
You know,
there are some people, and I hate to, to pick on Christianity, but there's an awful lot of uh, different denominations within Christianity that do not allow for there to be anything other than humanity and God. There's us and there's
right.
God, and that's it. And we, as humanity, are at the top of the pyramid, the top of the food chain.
Anything else is a demon,
Anything else has got to be
demonic. Yeah.
exactly. It's demonic. It's of the devil. It's a great deceit. And just because I don't share that view, I can't, in good faith, no pun intended, look at those people and say, "You're stupid. You're morons. How can you think? How can you be so narrow-minded?"
Right.
Because
Right. It's
that
not
is their
stupid. It's a valid
it's a
perspective.
it's a valid belief, and we have to remember that. Those of us that don't share the same spiritual or religious beliefs, just because somebody believes differently than you do, doesn't mean that their belief system is completely without basis or merit. It may not work for you, but if it works for them, it's not really my place or your place or anybody's place is to say it's a crock of shit, right? So you're right, John. I guess I just get too excited
Right.
about this because
Yeah.
I like a lot of people. I want to know, but also I would say, and I only mean this half jokingly, because I'm a Raiders fan and have lived with a lifetime of disappointment. To find out the worst case scenario, I'd probably be like, par for the course, figures. I'm used to that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
so for me, that's just part of why I say bring it. I want to know, regardless of what the truth is, and who knows, there may be several aspects to this truth.
Mhm.
We just don't know. I think it's far more complicated. I think there is no one size fits all
Right. I
explanation to
agree.
any of this, and to think that it is, to think that the US government coming out and saying, "Hey, yeah, okay, we're not alone." Um, I think it's far more complicated than that, because if they did say that, that would then open the door to, okay, how long have you known this?
Mhm.
Okay, why didn't you tell us this? And quite obviously, the most obvious question is going to be, well, tell us more. Are they here? Did
Mhm.
did we did we find them, or did they find us? I mean, there's just I
Do
can
we have
see
recovered technology? Do we, did you develop additional technology based on recovered technology? Are there these alleged agreements that are actually in place with some of these civilizations? And what's in those agreements? And what do they get out of them? What do we get from them? And do you have technology that could instantaneously solve our world energy crisis? But you don't bring it out into the public because it would cause the worldwide economy to instantly crash, you know,
yeah,
or would it cause the collapse of entire government systems because trust in government, would deteriorate, or who
yeah,
knows what? It's just
right.
I can see all there's more than two sides to that coin, like you said. Like
There
it's
is.
a complicated situation.
Yeah, and the ontological shock, I think, is a very real thing. I think it's a valid concern, and I think undeniably it would happen with several segments of society, and not just here in the United States, all over the world. Um, and again, just to give you an idea of how complicated this issue would be, John, you just said, okay, have we recovered craft and technology? Have we implemented that technology and reverse engineered it for our own country's benefit? And then
Hmm.
it gets into even finer hairs of, Okay, who are the defense contractors and the corporations that benefited from getting this technology? And did you give it to multiple ones at the same time? Or
Correct.
did you favor just this contractor, and this contractor? Because then that opens up a whole other, can of worms. And then we get into the more of the woo aspect of things where we're talking about abductions, right? So
Mhm.
if they were to admit that, okay, yes, we're not alone, okay, well then how about all these stories of abductions like the Betty and Barney Hill case, Travis Walton, um, and all these people that are taken against their will,
Mhm.
and in some cases have absolutely horrible things done to them, tantamount to rape, right?
Mhm.
So is this something that, was our government complicit in, like the many legends and myths go, that, in the 1950s, a treaty of some kind was signed between, take your pick, Truman or Eisenhower, and whatever one of these civilizations are, that in exchange for technology, we offer them basically open access to anybody that they want to do their own experiments and, get their rocks off.
Or there's the Terry Lovelace story, Incident at Devil's Den,
Right.
where he says he woke up enough to at least see his surroundings on one of these mother ships or something that people have mentioned, and saw what seemed to be clearly to him um, humans working on the ship with the aliens.
Right.
I don't know if that's
Well,
true.
and
But what if that's true?
I
What
think,
would that tell us, if that's true?
yeah, and I believe Travis Walton also, his account uh, entails something along those lines too, where there were uh, beings that looked just like humans, as well as, ones that clearly were not humans. They were humanoid, but they were also, they didn't look like we do as humans. And I think that was part of Travis Walton's account as well. So yeah, I mean, again, and then the coup de grace, of course, would be, what if these stories of people being, you know, killed for being a part of this secret?
Hmm?
Whether you're talking somebody like Phil Schneider, whose death does have some shady aspects to it. I categorically don't know if I believe even 1/10 of Phil Schneider's story, but it's interesting nonetheless. And the circumstances in which he died were a little, there's something that there doesn't add up. But that's just one story where we hear of these instances where, whether it's the legendary men in black that are coming to intimidate
Mhm.
somebody, to silence somebody, or in the worst cases where people have allegedly been executed because they uh, witnessed something they weren't supposed to, or they were threatening to come forward to share their information. um, there's no shortage of those kind of, you know anecdotes that are out there, but that's all they are.
It's a
But
can of worms right there, though. Imagine,
yeah,
imagine if that, again, this is all, we have to preface everything with imagine if this was true. But
right,
if that were true, who has the authority to issue that sort of order
right.
to assassinate an American citizen with no trial? That maybe they haven't even broken any laws, but they're just there's a danger of them letting this secret out, or maybe they've threatened to let to go public with this secret, so they've been killed.
Right.
Who has that authority? Who has that legal, and will, and do they, does that authority even exist? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, legally
Well,
speaking, I
for
don't know if that authority exists even. I don't know.
I'll give you a for instance on that. Now, there's all kinds of accounts where we see stuff like that happen all the time, where drug cartels are concerned, where somebody's an eyewitness or somebody is threatening to, you know, become a rat for the cops, and the cartel or the mafia will go and whack. whoever this person is, and in the very worst of circumstances, they don't just kill the person involved, but they kill the entire family. You see that more with the cartel type stuff than you do with the mafia. But there was a time in this country where people, they'd see a movie like The Godfather that openly shows the culture of the Sicilian mafia and their omerta, their code of silence, and people thought that that was all just, a made up Hollywood plot device, right? Well, as somebody who grew up in New York and in an area that had a very strong Sicilian population, I can tell you, I grew up in that kind of a environment where it was not unheard of. There was a mafia presence. I mean, I was friends with kids whose parents were in the life, as they would say,
Mhm.
and you would hear of, people that, ended up on the wrong side of a transaction with the mafia, ended up getting taken out, and you find them,
Yep.
you know. So just because it's not convenient for people to want to believe these things, and they think that it's too much of a stretch, it's fictionalized. Well, no, there is precedence for there being organizations that operate above the law. And
Mhm.
why would we think it would be any different if these allegations made by people like David Grush that there is a secret cabal or deep state, whatever name you want to ascribe to it? Why wouldn't we believe that if those things, and again, there's that big operative word, if, big, it's
Mhm.
conditional, but assuming these things are true, at least some of them, would that be such a stretch to think that
Yeah.
there would be rogue elements within our government that would be capable of doing this? And then to your question, John, is who would sign off on that? And that would be the big unknown, because
Right.
quite obviously we probably need to look no further than the JFK assassination,
Mhm.
where still Lee Harvey Oswald is held up as the lone wolf assassin that took out President Kennedy, but yet the Church Commission or not, I guess not the Church Commission, the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1978, was it, ruled that there was sufficient evidence to indicate that there may have been a conspiracy to kill Kennedy within our own government. And then you put that together with the fact that President Biden, or maybe it was even Trump, I can't remember, but one of the two, either Biden or Trump, had the opportunity to release the last bit of files pertaining to the JFK assassination that are still classified, and refused to do so because
Mhm. What does
because
that
the
tell you?
because the head of the CIA told the president, and they actually went public in saying this, said that the information that's in there would be too damaging to the Central Intelligence Agency and to the sovereignty of the United States of America, which that is exactly how conspiracy theories are born, people, is
Mhm.
lack of transparency, not being able to see that. Why would you not at least say it can't be released because of this, and this? If you're saying, well, because it will make us look bad, like that's going to shock anybody? I
Mhm.
mean, honestly. So,
But
so
if
the
the
prep,
reason is we can't say it because Kennedy was actually killed by the CIA because he was going to go public with this program. They can't say that.
right?
They would, if that were true,
Yeah,
there's no way they could say that. So that would be a good reason to just say, oh, we can't release them.
yeah,
I can't think of many other good reasons. You know,
right. So,
what sources and methods could they be protecting? What other details? I mean, from that long ago,
mhm.
what or who could they still be protecting? I don't get
Well,
it.
my understanding is there's still, and I thought that everybody that was directly involved from the government side investigating it, from the CIA, the FBI, Secret Service, that all those people had already passed away. Apparently, that's not true. Apparently, there's still a handful of people that are still alive today in 2024 that were part of these organizations. So whether or not that's true, does that justify the additional time that they're going to remain classified? I personally don't think so, but it is what it is. And at this point, nothing short of a presidential order, whoever becomes our president or remains our president in the next 2 weeks, uh, they're the ones that can decide whether or not it's going to see the light of day. So, but again, that just draws a parallel that there is a precedence that there can be, or we have very good reason to suspect that there could be rogue elements within our government, particularly with the sworn testimony given under oath by David Grush that there are programs that operate above and beyond the oversight of the United States Congress. And so yeah, big can of worms, uh, extremely multifaceted, deep, deep, deep rabbit hole to go down as far as this disclosure, as far as the government saying, yes, okay, we're not alone. Because simply admitting to that, that's gonna start, water leaking from the dam that they're just not gonna be able to plug. Um,
Yep.
because once that's out, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, as they say.
And you can't predict what's going to happen, which is probably another reason why they would be worried. Is you can make some educated guesses and some educated predictions, but you still, human nature being what it is, you really don't know what's going to happen.
And that is very true. Very true. So, folks, again, November 13th, it's coming, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to hold my breath for anything earth shattering or amazing, but I'm still excited nonetheless that it's happening. And you can guarantee what I'm going to be doing on November 13th, where I'm going to be. But so, anything else on that before we move on?
Nope.
All right. So the next thing, John, there's been reports in the news lately about these drone incursions over sensitive government and military installations. And specifically, one of the ones that happened recently was over Langley, which, of course, is the headquarters of the CIA. So, of course, the official government line is that these are not UFOs. These are not of an extraterrestrial or unexplainable phenomena kind of origin. They are actually saying these are most likely attempts at spycraft by an adversary, possibly an ally, but that they are not, the woo woo, the oh my gosh, that kind of thing. So what I have a problem with, John, and let me know if you agree with my opinion on this. It seems that the people that are charged with protecting our airspace are having difficulty doing just that. Am I wrong? I mean, that's what the optics look like to me as a person on the outside looking in. It looks like, because when you take into account the Chinese spy balloons, right? One of which was shot down by an F-22, okay, a missile that probably cost at least what, $500,000, if not $1 million, to shoot down what the Chinese probably spent the equivalent of $60 on, kind of type thing. And then there were what, two more balloons that were shot
Mhm.
down that remain classified. We don't know anything about them. We haven't seen any photos of them, and we're told that they've been classified. So if they're just Chinese technology, then why not put that on display for the whole world to see, let alone our own people? So again, there's these incursions with what we would call low tech, like these balloons, and then now these drones that are not only flying over our navy ships and our military bases, but also the headquarters of the CIA. It seems to me, John, that this is kind of like a, thumb in their nose, whoever it is, at the United States. It looks like it's being done deliberately to kind of flaunt and taunt. What's your takeaway?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's interesting to me that they just call them drones and they don't go into very much description about what they look like.
Right.
I I, I would like to hear a little bit more about what they look like, how they're behaving. Just calling them drones is one thing, but I did read an article saying that they don't appear to be using or emitting radio frequencies in the spectrum that commercial drones would use for communication. So that's intriguing. Um, yeah, but the fact that we don't seem to have anti-drone technology that's usable inside the U.S., I mean, I could see you can't shoot a missile at it. You're in a populated area. You can't use guns on it, probably. I mean, you could, but those bullets might land somewhere and hit somebody. I read that they were worried about using GPS jammers because they might affect aircraft in the area. It still seems to me that they probably have some sort of directed energy weapon. They've got
Right.
to,
They
even if
got
it's
to
just
have
a light
something. Yeah.
microwave. Get the microwave beam from Skinwalker Ranch
Right.
and point it at the drones, knock them out of the sky. And I don't know, it depends on where they are, though. If they're actually over Langley Air Force Base, then you know they're okay probably with them dropping on the base. But if they're out over a little more populated area, then you probably don't want stuff dropping if you don't exactly know what it is dropping on somebody's house. I mean, there's a lot of considerations, but it does seem kind of weird that they don't have some sort of defense for them.
It does, and it doesn't instill. When I hear stories like this, and maybe it's because of the way that they're reported, but it doesn't instill a great deal of confidence in security of our airspace. And that's not even getting into the whole tic tac and all the legitimate UAP reports that are out there. I'm talking about drone technology. And
Mhm.
then there's these reports of motherships releasing swarms of drones. I mean, again, I'm not going to jump to the extraterrestrial and ET hypothesis. I don't think it's little green men or little gray men. Is it possible? Sure. Of course, it's always a possibility, but is it likely? Again, maybe, but it's not a big maybe, lowercase m for the maybe on that. Um, I just, and the thing that doesn't help is, well, I mean, I've actually got a quote here, and this was from the 17th of October, so just about 5 days ago. United States Air Force Major General Pat Ryder said during a press briefing that we have no evidence to indicate that extraterrestrial life has ever visited the planet, close quote. And as far as the drone incursions go, the U.S. Air Combat Command head, a gentleman by the name of General Mark Kelly, asserts that the recent drone incursions are not alien or NHI, but likely from an adversary such as China or Russia. So, when pressed as to why the military has the authorization to do a shoot down of private aircraft like Cessnas whenever they deliberately stray into restricted airspace, like even in New York City, if they're to stray over towards the New York skyline to go after one of the big skyscrapers, the military has the authorization to shoot down those civilian aircraft without question. Now, I'm sure in a situation, a scenario like that, they're still going to try to make radio contact with whoever it is in that aircraft and say, look, you're going to have an F 22 or an F 35 on your ass in a matter of seconds, and you better respond and turn tail, or else, you're going to learn about the law of gravity real quick. So, but yet, uh, the government, they seem to take no action whatsoever when these drone incursions happen over Langley and other sensitive areas. And the only explanation offered is that it's up to each individual base commander as to whether or not they're going to shoot these things down. And it's not necessarily a blanket policy that if you're flying into restricted airspace, that there's authorization to shoot one of these things down. And of course, John, we've heard accounts from the guys at Skinwalker Ranch because they've had drones flying over the ranch property, and the ranch is private property, but it's against the law for them to shoot down. Like if Caleb or Dragon were to take a shot at one of these drones, uh, that's actually against the law. They can't do that. So again, what it does for me when we hear representatives from the Pentagon saying, well, it's not really our policy. And it's like, so we may very well have China or Russia spying right there within tens of feet of these sensitive military installations that are purposely taking photos and taking video of where our naval ships are in the harbor there in DC or in Norfolk, Virginia, or any of the other places along the East Coast. How is that not considered, something to get a little more worked up about? Now, maybe they know something that we don't, so we have to take that as a possibility. But as just just me, Jim Kelgard, a no-name citizen, when I hear stories like this, it does not inspire or instill confidence in my nation's ability to protect itself, let alone to protect its secrets. What are your thoughts?
Well, I did read one possible explanation, that it's that federal law doesn't allow them to shoot them down unless they feel like they're under imminent threat. So if they're just kind of hanging out and not doing anything actively threatening, that under current law they can't take action. So maybe that's true. I don't know. It does seem kind of strange that that would be the law, though. The other interesting tidbit I heard, though, was apparently, I have to find what article I read this in, but apparently 11 miles from Langley Air Force Base, a Chinese citizen had a drone get stuck in a tree. Turns out he's from a student at the University of Minnesota who's all the way over by Langley Air Force Base at a naval shipyard using a drone to take pictures of ships being built, I think, because it was a place that builds ships and submarines. I can't remember the name of the company, but they caught him. I mean, he hauled ass across the country and was about to board a plane to go back to China, and they arrested him.
Yeah.
So that does kind of make you think, okay, maybe this is, if he was also using one of these drones, maybe this is some sort of Chinese activity. And like you said, thumbing their noses, maybe they know the rules, they know the laws, they know that the base can't do anything about it under current law. So they just go ahead and do it. Like they're what's stopping us,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
And I guess, again, armchair quarterbacking here, but the fact that they are using our own laws against us, if that's the case, that's really upsetting. Um, there needs to be, I guess I see it as more of a black and white issue where it's a common sense thing that if you've got restricted airspace, and specifically where the CIA is headquartered or where sensitive military installations are, where the shipbuilding is going on. I mean, heaven forbid, if you try flying a drone over Area 51, good luck. You're
Right.
probably never going to see the
What?
drone again. And not only that, they're probably going to already know from the frequency exactly where you're controlling the drone from, and they're going to probably pounce on you in a matter of minutes. So you can't tell me that there's not precedent for taking action. But to your point, let's look at the differences. Area 51 is literally out in the middle of nowhere. There is no civilization out there other than the tiny town of Rachel, Nevada, which has a booming population of maybe 30 people. And then you've got Washington, D.C., where the D.C. metro area has how many millions of people?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Langley Air
it's
Force Base is clear down at the end of that peninsula, completely surrounded by, uh, lots of industry, lots of residential areas. I mean, it's completely surrounded by residential activity too. So
yeah,
yeah, it's who knows where that stuff would land.
yeah. Yeah, so it's again, it's an opportunity where anytime the news can pounce on something that may be involved with the UFO and UAP community and maybe take a jab at it, kind of bothers me, whenever it's
Mhm.
something like that where, I mean, 9 times out of 10, let's be honest, probably 9.9 times out of 10, it's not little green men or little gray men. It's,
Mhm.
perfectly rational, mundane explanation for it. So yeah, just kind of this drone thing kind of irks me a little bit that
You made
we
a great point though. Like, even if the law is that the base commander, can't take action unless they seem imminently dangerous, like under imminent threat. Like you said, you fly a drone out Area 51, not only is that drone going to disappear, you're going to disappear because they're going to know where you are.
Right.
And, you know, so
Yeah.
on, right? You know for sure that that's what would happen.
Right.
So why the different rules, you know?
Yeah, and that's and I can already tell some of our subscribers and viewers are going to say, well, big difference between what's alleged to go on over at Area 51, whereas the real fringe and the real forward-thinking research, or the S4 where they allegedly have at least 9 recovered UFOs, right? Versus the shipbuilding yards there on the East Coast and in Maryland and Virginia. Yeah, okay, I readily accept that, but still, again, it's a restricted airspace. Knowing my luck, if I bought, a drone, one of these $300-400 drones, and ended up flying it unbeknownst to me into a restricted area, my luck, I'd probably end up, in jail and
Mm-hmm.
getting fined because I wasn't, following the law. But yet here we see these instances where these bad actors or would-be spies or actual spies from our adversaries or even our allies are breaking the law and doing these things. There doesn't, again, it's the whole optics. We don't see if there's any repercussions happening to these people or organizations that are doing these activities. And that's what's troubling to me, is that it's left unresolved.
You know,
Uh,
a thought just occurred to me. This hadn't occurred to me until just now. That one, we don't know what the drones are doing. Let's assume that they are, Chinese spy drones. We don't know what sensor packages are on there. We don't know what it is they're trying to learn. But what if the reason they're there and poking at us is to learn how we would deal with drones? And the reason we aren't responding is because we don't want them to know what we would do if we really needed to. Like maybe we have ways of dealing with them. We don't want to show them what they are and give them some information they might be looking for. So we're just kind of hanging back, maybe dealing with it some other way. But we don't want to demonstrate exactly what it is they're looking for. That could be a situation too.
Absolutely. Things to make you go,
Hmm?
hmm,
Yeah.
right on.
I guess
Excellent.
as with everything else, we have no idea what the hell is going
Yeah.
on.
We're talking out of our ass right now, folks. At
Yes,
least
we have
I
no
am.
clue
We have no
whatsoever.
clue. Yeah, we're just two guys that have an active interest in these things, and just, talking, and the first thoughts and things that come out of our mind, which I realize, being a Raiders fan, it's difficult enough for me to put one coherent sentence together, let alone, sound like I have any kind of intelligence whatsoever, especially when I've only had about 6 hours of sleep over the last 4 days. So I apologize if I'm just not making any sense. If I apologize if I'm not making less sense than usual. Yeah, that's what I mean. Anyhow, so last topic we'll talk about, John. This Sunday, just 2 days ago, there's this organization called the New Paradigm Institute. Yay. Run by this individual by the name of Danny Sheehan, a name which anybody who takes an interest in this topic should recognize very quickly. And they had this thing that they called Disclosure Day, that they were bringing on these subject matter experts and high profile celebrities such as Lou Elizondo to kind of give a talk about the current state of the UFO business, if you will. Not too dissimilar from what you and I are doing right now, but whereas they had celebrities like Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and um, people like that, Karl Nell, we're just, John Neiberger and Jim Kelgard. So, we're not exactly celebrities of any kind. Sorry to disappoint you, John. I
I
know.
know. I thought we
And
were there, man. I thought we'd made it
yeah,
finally.
right. No. So, but of all the things that were revealed, the two big takeaways that I have were a presentation, a very short presentation. In fact, under 8 minutes, 7 minutes and change that Karl Nell gave, where went, he kind of revisited the remarks that he made during the Soul Foundation meeting that were just about a year ago, where actually, I take that back. It wasn't just the Soul Foundation, it was earlier this year when he made the zero doubt comment about his knowledge of there being non-human intelligence interaction on this earth. He kind of doubled down with the statements that he made, and I'll actually read the highlights of his little spiel that he gave. But the other big takeaway, which I think will be a good starting point, is Danny Sheehan, if I'm not mistaken, also revealed the GPS coordinates of what he alleges is the location of a USO off the coast of California. And when I say USO, I don't mean the branch of the military that goes out there and sends famous musicians and whatnot out to the brave men and women serving our country in forward operating areas that to help take their mind off of everything that they're doing in a combat zone. Not that USO. I'm talking about unidentified submerged objects or underwater UFOs, if you will. So again, John, it's off the coast of California, and there's been all kinds of allegations and all kinds of stories that there is activity regularly occurring off the coast of California that involves transmedium travel of, in other words, objects that are flying around in the atmosphere and dive into the ocean with, without, it doesn't slow them down one bit. It's like they're just effortlessly going from one space to the other without even so much as a splash. So it's not the first time we've heard of stories or claims of there being underwater submerged objects or underwater UFOs off the coast of California. Catalina Island is a hotbed of activity for things like that, and the whole area south of San Diego. Tom DeLong has told some great stories of things that are out there that he's been made aware of. So, but this is one where Danny Sheehan, and I haven't watched it myself, so I'm just, if I get this wrong, folks, I apologize, and I'll beat my sources to a pulp if they led me down the wrong path here. But my understanding is that Danny Sheehan actually gave GPS coordinates so that people could look on Google Earth at the specific area of where this alleged activity is taking place and where this object or this base perhaps is in fact located. So um, again, I don't know what to make of it. So as far as Sheehan's claim, and in full disclosure, folks, I don't really have an opinion of Danny Sheehan one way or the other. Um, there are things about him that give me reason to doubt his credibility. There are things that make me wonder if maybe he does have an inside perspective and really is somebody that's in the know. But I haven't seen anything conclusively to sway me into believing that what this guy says can be taken at face value or should be taken at face value. So I myself, as far as Sheehan's claim of the location of this, unidentified submersible object, um, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. How about you?
Yep, same. That's kind of, I feel the same way about him. He seems to have some connections. But yeah, I just don't trust him. I can't entirely put my finger on why. I mean, I kind of can, because I don't entirely trust Lou Elizondo, and I think they have a connection there. I don't know what's up with Lou either yet. I can't figure what that out, but I think I think Sheehan is, there's something, I don't know, something's, he doesn't pass the vibe check for me.
Yeah.
He gives me bad vibes, and so does Jim Garrison at New Paradigm Institute, because I sat next to him at the SCU conference last year for a little bit, and he said some things, and I saw some things on a video today that he said. I'm like, okay, yeah, now I know why I don't like the guy, So I just don't trust him. I mean, maybe their hearts are in the right place. Maybe they are who they say they are. And maybe their motives are good, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I feel
Yeah,
like
and
pushing the celebrity side of it too much, and they're enjoying this, being the figurehead, so to speak, one of the many figureheads of the disclosure movement. If they seem to like it a little bit too much, they seem to be seeking the limelight, which on the one hand makes sense if they're trying to broaden the horizon or broaden people's minds and get more information out there. Sure, maybe they want to be in the spotlight to spread the news. They're spreading the gospel. But
right,
on the other hand, I don't know. I just at the moment don't trust them.
yeah, yeah. Something about Sheehan just has never sat well with me. And it's not even so much a case that I distrust all lawyers. I mean, I'm a law-abiding citizen. Have no reason to distrust lawyers in general. I have some very good friends that are lawyers. I have family members that are lawyers. But I think what kind of puts Sheehan into question for me is his past association with Dr. Stephen Greer. And Greer himself is a polarizing figure for
Right.
me anyway,
Right.
because I think Stephen Greer started off from a very altruistic place. I think that we all owe Dr. Stephen Greer a huge debt of gratitude for the beginning this disclosure movement, if you want to call it that, clear back in the late '90s, early 2000s. I think he's done a lot of work that people today, he laid the foundation for a lot of people that are doing what they're doing today that I do respect and that I do have admiration for. But Greer strikes me as a person that started believing his own legend,
Hmm.
believing his own myth. And what cinched it for me was the whole CE5 protocol thing that he's doing. And again, folks, this is just my personal opinion. And I know that a lot of our subscribers, a lot of our close friends, John,
Hmm.
are people who practice the CE5. And if that's what you guys, if that's your thing, more power to you. Good for you. Keep doing it. But for me, it's just it's a bridge too far for me for a lot of reasons. But the number one thing is the fact that um, you know, the amount of money that he was charging for one of these CE5 workshop things that he does. I mean, uh, people are complaining about, Skinwalker Ranch and the Insider program. That's $10 a month
Yeah.
versus how many thousands of dollars that
Right.
Greer was
Yeah, the
doing.
Greer thing is expensive. Yep.
The way I feel about it, folks, is that if this is knowledge as Greer claims that will benefit all of humanity, why the fuck are you charging for it? It should be something that should be free and open to everybody. You should be teaching everybody because it's the right thing to do, right? So if it's something that you have to charge money for to share this, world changing, life changing knowledge, it, I don't know, monetizing it to the extent and degree that he has doesn't sit well with me.
Right. If he's handling lodging and food and that type of thing, I could understand, a fee. But even then, I don't remember what it is. The last time I looked at it was years ago, and it was still outrageous. It was
Yeah,
thousands of dollars.
yeah.
I don't get that.
And I know there's people out there that will, teach the CE5. There's some people that will do it for free, and that's great, But
You look on
uh,
YouTube.
yeah, right. Put it out on YouTube. Make it open
It's on
source.
YouTube.
Make it open source for everybody. Because if this is really truly something to connect with your consciousness to other beings out there in the universe, and then the other thing that never sat well with me with Greer is this blanket assumption and this, okay, not even assumption, this blanket proclamation of his that whatever these phenomena are, that they are undeniably benevolent and that they do not pose any kind of a threat or are hostile in any way. That is that's really foolish to do. And I'm not saying, that these, if these are, again, the big conditional if these things are extraterrestrial or even interdimensional, we don't know if what
Right.
their purpose is. We don't know why they're here. Even if they're telling you, as Greer asserts, that they're telling us that they're here to watch over us and they want us to be better stewards of the planet. Okay, yeah, I can get behind that. You
We're
know,
here
we
from the galactic government and we're here to help.
yeah, right. uh, that reminds me of an old Ronald Reagan quote, which I'll share with you afterward. But yeah, it's there's just too many questions. I mean, Greer did so good. He started off so well, and his unacknowledged documentary, I freaking love that. That was one of the things that got me into this whole thing of what I'm doing right now. So it's not that I think Greer was a complete, fraudster or shyster from the get-go. It's not that at all. It's just that I think he's lost the plot. I think that he's allowed himself to believe that it's his belief and his testimony alone that can change the course of humanity and lead us all to that promised land, as it were. That's the way he comes across to me. And if I get him wrong, you know, not that I ever expect Dr. Greer to listen to or to, watch this program. I have no axe to grind with Dr. Greer. I think he's probably a very fine, decent human being. By most accounts, he appears to be. I'm just not sure I can place full and complete stock in everything that he says when he comes out with information. He's not a trusted, reliable source anymore for me. And I wish I could enunciate and articulate it better than I am. But because of that, and because of Sheehan's affiliation with him, and the fact, again, just my personal opinion, it seems to me that Sheehan, especially the way he threw Travis Taylor under the bus earlier this year or last year, um, he's a guy that he strikes me as it's all about the dollar signs for him. It's all about what can he do to make money off of this, off of people's belief systems,
Yep.
and,
And he
and
has
here,
access to grind. I think that's why he did that to Travis. And,
yeah,
yeah, I think
yeah,
he has personal access to grind and is using his stage, to grind them. So
yeah.
I
And
agree.
let's be honest. I mean, he gave an interview where he talked about how he essentially stole classified documents. Where he, the this interview that he gave about a year or so ago, where he's talking about how many years ago he went into this skiff and was shown photos and all this stuff, and he basically scampered off with, hiding these documents that he had taken out of this secured location with him. And he's a lawyer. That, by definition, is against the law, is it not? I mean, that's, and again, maybe I'm not understanding the situation correctly, but that right there, anybody who's willing to, you know, break the law, not just bend the law, but break the law and take something that does not belong to them surreptitiously, that's a big red flag. That's a big red flag. I'm not inclined to trust anybody that's willing to do something like that. And so again, there's just too many question marks and too many things that make me, you know, to I can't throw my support behind anything that Danny Sheehan's involved in. And again, I've never met the guy. I don't know what kind of person he is, other than what I see. And what I've seen, I've not been impressed by. And Lou Elizondo, same thing. I've never met the guy. I think Lou's heart was probably in the right place, probably still is, just as I do think with Greer that they both still ultimately want, a good outcome for everybody. But again, you know, it's people's actions that speak louder than their words. And, you know, there's just too many question marks with Lou as well. The book was a fantastic read. I loved reading the book. And an opportunity to listen to him in person and maybe even, talk to him in person just to get a better feel for what kind of person he is. But that whole, all three of them, Greer, Elizondo, and Sheehan, there's just something about them that to me does not add up. And if I knew how to better articulate it, I would. Um, and I'm not saying they're bad men. I'm not saying that these guys are crooks. Just that, there's behaviors, there's been things that I've seen and read that just, give me reason to be skeptical, I
Yeah,
guess is
it's a
my
side
point.
effect of only having part of the story.
Right.
We only see bits and pieces. There's where the fact of the matter is on with any of these guys, we don't know most of the story. Most of
Right.
it is still hidden from us. So we're just trying to piece together something that makes sense, based on what they're saying. Like, how does all this make sense?
Right.
You take what they're saying, how they're behaving, and you're like, it's natural for us to try to, put those puzzle pieces together in a way that we can wrap our heads around.
Hmm.
And when we can't, we're like, okay, something still isn't adding up. And I agree with you with those three right there. I'm in the same boat. Something just doesn't add up, and maybe it's just we're missing some puzzle pieces. And once we get them all, it'll all make sense. And these are all great guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
I. But
Ultimately, I hope that we are all on the same side. I genuinely do.
yeah,
And if it turns out, like you said, when we get some more of those puzzle pieces, and if that ends up being the case, then you know I'll be the first one that's up there cheering for him. Trust me. And I am a man who will gladly eat my words if I'm ever wrong on my observations or my views on somebody. That's one thing I do
yep,
pride myself on is when I get it wrong, I'm not afraid to admit it and to come clean about it. So,
same,
but
right there
yeah,
with you.
yeah. So, however, there was one very noteworthy thing that we mentioned just a moment ago about this Disclosure Day 2024, and that would be Karl Nell. So, John, tell us a little bit. What are your views on Karl Nell, and what do you understand about why we should be interested in what this gentleman has to say?
Again, another interesting character. I mean, I completely trust what he says, but I also don't really entirely know his background. Like, I don't know when he was at, in different jobs. I don't know what exactly he was involved in. I don't know how much of what he's telling us he knows from firsthand information, or has he just heard it from people he trusts. And in certain cases, it sounded to me like he was getting information from other people that he trusts and that it wasn't firsthand.
Right.
But in what he said on Disclosure Day, he did say at least one time, and I can't remember what he was referencing, but he said it was something he knew personally to be true, which I don't think I had heard him say that before. So that's interesting. So I need to go back and listen to it again and find out what if he was referring to something in specific. I don't remember, but he did say, I know this personally.
Hmm.
Again,
Right.
I don't know what that means. Is that firsthand? I experienced it. I saw the data. I saw the video. I saw the alien. I saw whatever it is.
Yeah.
He saw and experienced it, or is he still saying, "Yeah, well, I heard it from a guy that I trust."
Hmm.
And now you're back to Sean Kirkpatrick's self-licking ice cream cone theory. You know, I hate the guy, but
I
that is,
love that.
I love that term. Like you have this giant circle of people telling each other things, and they all think somebody else, confirmed
Right.
it, and then you end up with something that's not true, but they all heard it from somebody they trust, so they all
Right.
think it's true. So I
Yeah.
get it. I get what he's saying. Again, I can't stand Sean Kirkpatrick, but I got to give him credit. Self-licking ice cream cone is freaking cool. So, so
Yes,
we'll find
indeed.
out. Karl Nell seems like a serious guy with a lot of experience, and um, I would like to hear more from him. Wouldn't it be cool if he showed up as a witness
I
at
think that would be very
the
cool.
hearing?
Yeah, he's kind of one of the people that I'm secretly hoping gets called for the
Or at,
13th of November hearing.
Tim Gaudet, what about him?
Yeah,
He said he
absolutely.
would testify. I think it was him that said he would testify if he was called.
Yep,
Pretty cool to get him up there.
yep, absolutely.
But again, there's another guy. I don't know what he actually knows firsthand versus what other people have told him. So again, we're operating on, we have 0.01% of the picture and we're trying to put the puzzle together. It's
Right.
frustrating as hell.
Yep. Absolutely. So what I'm going to do now, John, is I'm going to read the bulk of Karl Nell's brief presentation. He says, quote, non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity on this planet. This interaction is ongoing and it's not new. There is zero doubt, close quote. He then goes on to talk about three principles of data, and he breaks each one of them down. The first one is what he calls the first principles argument, and that has two components to it. The first of which is counter to common belief, life is common in the universe. How do we know life should be common? There's 20 billion sun-like stars in the universe. Our sun is a population 1 star. In other words, presumably there's just one inhabitable planet around that star, our sun. There are stars like our sun that are 5 billion years older than our sun. That's plenty of time for other civilizations to evolve on these other planets. And the second component of the first principles argument is faster than light travel. Miguel Alcubierre, a post-grad student at the University of New Mexico in 1994, solved Einstein's equations for a faster than light mechanism. NASA has investigated this, and it is generally accepted in academia that his solution is valid. His solution requires negative energy. In 1960, quantum physics demonstrated, or rather predicted, the reality of negative energy. And in the 1990s, the Casimir effect was demonstrated in a laboratory. The Casimir effect is negative energy. The expansion of the universe, which is caused by dark energy, is negative energy. So we have a solution to Einstein's faster than light travel that proposes such a thing is in fact possible. This isn't an engineering solution. We can't just go and do this, but theoretically, it's possible. So that's the first principles argument. The second component of this is testimonial evidence. And he says Presidents Obama and Trump are on record stating that UAPs or UFOs are real. We could look at Chris Mellon, David Grush, Lou Elizondo, etc., who have also gone on record confirming not only the reality of UAPs, but that non-human intelligence is real. From the former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hellyer to Haim Eshed, the father of Israel's space program, many prominent government and military officials from multiple countries have gone on record stating that they have knowledge that UAPs and NHIs, or non-human intelligence, are very real. And then there's the third component, which is data and documented evidence. And for this, he presents these 6 or 7 points of data and document evidence. Number 1, the Go Fast, Tic Tac, and Gimbal videos. Number 2, astronaut Gordon Cooper chased UFOs over what was then West Germany in 1951, and he gave sworn testimony to the United Nations of that in 1978. Nuclear missile site incursions in the 1970s. Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, where the missiles were taken offline by a UFO that was seen hovering over the base. In the same era, at around the same time, a similar thing happened to the Soviets at one of their bases. But instead of the missiles being taken offline or shut down, they were brought to the brink of launch readiness, also by a UFO hovering over the base. And how do we know this? We know this from testimony of guards and officers from both the Soviet military and our own Air Force that have testified of having experienced and witnessed these things firsthand. They were there when they happened. There's also documentary evidence in the form of what is called the Twining Memo in 1947 from General Nathan Twining, who was the future Chief of Staff of the Air Force. He wrote a memorandum that said UFOs are most likely extraterrestrial, and you can view that document in the National Archives. Declassified documents from the Australian National Archives in 1971 made a formal assessment of the United States' interest in UFOs, the reality of UFOs, and that the US was actively investigating UFOs and developing anti-gravity programs in concert with their UFO investigations. An assertion that makes no sense whatsoever unless the reality of this topic was demonstrated to the Australian government officials. In July of 1952, UFOs flew over Washington, D.C. over 2 weekends. There were radar confirmations, visual sightings, and air-to-air intercepts, and it resulted in the largest press briefing since World War II up to that point in time. And then lastly, for the evidence and documentary evidence, we have the aerial school incident in Zimbabwe in 1994. UFOs landed in broad daylight and presented beings and occupants on the ground that were witnessed by dozens of school children. And in a near identical incident happened in Western Australia in 1966. And in both of those cases, the eyewitnesses are still alive and still assert that they really happened. Now, he goes on to say, all of these things taken together, along with many other things, stand as credible and irrefutable evidence that UFOs, UAPs, and NHI are real. And I'm speaking with you today to tell you that there is zero doubt this is absolutely true. I know this personally. Close quote.
There you go.
So there you go, John. There's his comment. And just to reiterate that, he says, I'm speaking with you today to tell you that there is zero doubt. This is absolutely true. I know this personally. So that's a pretty strong statement to be making. He's saying zero doubt, which he said earlier in the year, I think back in March or April timeframe, at another conference, actually a financial conference that was being held on Wall Street, if I'm not mistaken, which was the first time that he said there is zero doubt that we have been visited by non-human intelligence. So he's kind of doubling down here. And while he doesn't provide any further evidence or proof of his claims that he has zero doubt, he does say that he knows it personally. And I guess that, as you said, John, is kind of open to personal interpretation. Does that personally mean that he was there and witnessed firsthand the NHI and the UFO that was crashed or that had landed? We don't know, right?
Exactly. I want to know what he meant by that. Like, what does I know that personally mean?
Exactly, because those that want to believe are going to automatically, steer that in the direction of, well, he was there and has firsthand knowledge. And because of the positions that he held within the military, he would be in a position to maybe know some of these things. And if I'm not mistaken, Karl Nell was involved in the UAP task force. I'm not sure of when specifically that was, but my understanding is part of his resume does involve time with the Pentagon's UAP task force, which of course was set up after Elizondo retired in 2017. So, like you, John, I don't know what to make of his, personally assertion. Does that mean that he has firsthand knowledge? I don't know. It would be cool if that's what he means, but it would also be nice if he had somebody ask him to clarify that remark. Does he have firsthand, in-person knowledge, meaning he was there watching it happen, or he had hands-on whatever this material was? Um, we want to know, right?
Yeah, exactly. And no, I also have to say that I don't really believe anything that any of these guys say. Everything is conditional. Like I will temporarily hold different ideas and think, okay, if that person is telling the truth, then that means this other stuff is probably true, and you try to piece it together. But then you think, okay, but what if only part of what this person's saying is true, and part of what this other person is saying is true? It gets really complicated.
Yeah,
So I think that's part of my frustration with all of this and with all of these personalities is you don't know. Like I'm fully convinced that none of them are telling the 100% truth. I would wager that every single one of them in all of their statements, there's at least some half truths or flat out lies in there. Sometimes for good reason, maybe to cover up a national secret, maybe to make themselves look better, to make themselves look more important, whatever it is. So I think that's frustrating, is it's hard. We're in a position where we have no way of knowing which parts are true and which ones aren't.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, Karl Nell, guys like him, those are the sorts of people that I put a lot more stock into what they say.
right.
I still don't necessarily believe everything he said. And honestly, you have to there's a possibility that every one of them are lying, and it's for some other reason.
Yeah,
Like maybe they're covering up some other program.
right.
So all of
You,
them are lying about, this to cover up something else that we haven't even thought of yet. I
well,
don't think it's true
you,
at all.
you,
I'm
you
just
got,
saying,
yeah, you got to figure
never.
there has to be some degree of sleight of hand going on, right? Where you're distracting people with this hand while the other hand is all, doing something else. And
I think that might be what's happening with one of the other things that I don't think we're talking about tonight.
we're gonna briefly touch on it, but
Okay. That
but
might be what's
but
happening with, so we'll get there.
hold that thought, because that's a good segue. But before we segue into that, I'll just add my amen to what you just said, is that we have to be you have to approach all of this excuse me, with a healthy dose of skepticism, because extraordinary claims do require some kind of substantial evidence in some shape or form, uh, to substantiate what they're doing, what your claims are. And I think there's examples of where it's being done the right way, such as on Skinwalker Ranch. And anybody that wants to debate me on that, I will debate you from sun up till sundown, because at least with Skinwalker Ranch, you've got Dr. Travis Taylor, who is an absolutely brilliant mind, and none of them are saying categorically, "Oh, what we're dealing with here is aliens, or we're dealing with interdimension, or we're dealing with," you know, they don't know, and they're the first persons to say, "We don't know." But here is what we have found in our research thus far,
Yep.
and they have been as transparent as the NDAs that they have signed with with I would assume Prometheus Entertainment and the History Channel allow them to be, in regards to sharing information about research and things that they have been able to uh, put together on Skinwalker Ranch. And they'll be the first ones to tell you, once they figure something out, instead of solving anything, it just adds more. There's more questions, and I think that's the way it's going to be. But at least, in my eyes anyway, they're doing it the right way. And you can bitch and complain. You can say, "Well, Jim, you just gave Greer a hard time about charging people money," and it's like, well, you know, again, I can't be too hard on them, because those people that spend those thousands of dollars on the CE5, that's their right to do so. It's their money. If that's what they want to do, knock yourselves out, right? Well,
Mhm.
with Skinwalker Ranch, we have the Insider Program, which is, $10 a month, or you can do a full year for, just under $100 or right around $100. So again, if that's how I want to spend my money or anybody else, we've got a right to do that. But I think, the scale of what we're looking at, several $1,000s, or in some cases, I've heard $10,000 to attend one of Greer's sessions
Wow.
versus $10 a month or even $100 a year. A little more understandable there, but still, I put a lot more trust in the team out at Skinwalker Ranch, like Eric Bard and Travis Taylor, Caleb Bench, Tom Winterton, uh, Dragon. I mean, all those guys, um, Jim Royston, Sam DeRiso, those guys are the best at what they do, and they are true subject matter experts. Jim, Jim Royston, I mean, he was involved with the International Space Station, for heaven's sake. The guy understands technology. Um, so they're doing. I think Skinwalker Ranch and the work being done there is a better blueprint for what it could be in this overall UFO thing, but it's also in a lot of ways where I'm comparing apples to oranges, because the UFO thing, we're talking about national secrets and national security, which, it's a lot more complicated of a picture than what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch. So, um, but yeah, I just like you were saying, John, as far as all the UFO UAP thing goes, I do believe that there's intelligent life out there. I do believe that it's possible that they could have been here or that they may be coming here now. I'm not at all closing the door on that being a possibility or even a likelihood.
Yep.
But until we know more, until more information is independently verified, until we see some of this evidence ourselves, then it's just going to be really cool, interesting, and fascinating stories that
Mhm.
I'm going to eat up and I'm going to research the heck out of as much as I can. But I'm not formulating an opinion one way or the other. I'm not going to say it's all BS, and I'm not going to say it's all real, because we just don't know. There's too many unknowns, too many unknown quantities, and especially in a field that has a history of being replete with fraud and hoaxing and misinformation, disinformation, you name it. I mean, it's difficult to know which end is up. Really, it's hard to know who to trust, and I think a lot of that, John, is by design.
It is
So, so because of that, it's healthy to be open minded, but to also be skeptical. And
healthy.
then yeah,
Yes.
and saying that I'm skeptical doesn't mean that I'm saying it's all bunk and BS. I'm just saying, okay, you've got my attention.
Mhm.
Let's see where this goes. I'm going to keep an open mind. If it is aliens, great, but show me the proof. Show me
Mhm.
the irrefutable proof. If it's, top secret government technology, great. Show me how you arrived at that conclusion. And show me, just like your math teacher in junior high and high school used to make you do, show me your math, check your work. I want to see how you arrived at the solution of that equation, So, and we'll leave that there. Any other closing thoughts before we segue into our final little
Nope.
blurb?
I think we're good.
All right. So there's one final thing that John and I are going to talk about real quick, and we're just going to take a few minutes on this because there's not really a lot to talk about on it. And that would be this new catchphrase, this new buzzword, or buzzwords, I guess we could say, that came about back on October 8th, when an independent investigative journalist by the name of Michael Schellenberger, I think is his name,
Yep.
uh, dropped this article about a whistleblower who I believe is still currently serving in the military, that came to him with knowledge of a program that is operating above and beyond the oversight of Congress, as David Grush has alleged happens, and that this program had a really interesting name. And it's the first time I'd ever heard the name. And but that name, for those of you that don't know, is called Immaculate Constellation. And uh, John, it made for really exciting news to read and really interesting because it was something new that we'd never heard before.
Mhm.
And this guy Schellenberger has a solid reputation for being a guy that really vets his sources, and he really his shtick. He's not at all a UFO guy. He has never had any interest in this topic. His main thing is following stories of abuse of power. And so he was approaching this article from the standpoint of, there is a top secret, above top secret, and I know all of my military people are going to be mad at me for using that term because there is no such thing as above top secret, right? But this allegation that there is this ultra black program that Congress themselves are allegedly not privy to, and Schellenberger says this whistleblower told him that multiple presidential administrations have been briefed on the existence of this program. And he doesn't go into any great detail about what this program is, other than it pertains to UFOs and UAPs. We don't know if it's a crash retrieval program. We don't know if it's an NHI uh, autopsy and research type of a program. All that we know is that it's tied in some way to the UFO and UAP field, and it's called Immaculate Constellation, and that's all that we know. The only other thing that I will say about it is within about a day or so of the article coming out, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp did an episode of their Weaponized podcast, and Jeremy Corbell, uh, without coming flat out and making any definitive statement of saying this is real, he basically was like, pay attention to this because it seems to fit, and another one of his, trust me, bro, kind of things. So obviously, I have a great deal of respect for George Knapp, and um, I think that he does a fairly good job historically of trying to give you the story as straight as he's able to do it. And there didn't seem to be a lot of pushback from George Knapp on the things that Jeremy Corbell was saying about it. So I don't know, John, just something about this seems off. Something about this seems like the kind of thing that a person like Richard Doty would pull to be like a misdirection.
Mm.
Um, Kind of like we were talking sleight of hand. Hey, Immaculate Constellation, while over here, the real
Yeah,
shit's going on. So I don't know, John. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but I'm not buying it as sold at face value. How about
yeah.
you?
Same here. I agree. I don't buy it. And here's why. It's intriguing and it may end up being true or partially true. Um, like you said, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell say, they've heard of it. I don't remember exactly how they phrased it, but they're like, yeah, this exists, or we've been told it exists by people we trust. Um, Even Michael Schellenberger says he confirmed it with someone else who he could verify. So he has at least two sources that say, yes, this is real. But here was the thought that occurred to me yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I've lost track of time. But this Schellenberger said that this whistleblower person not only gave this information to several members of Congress, but also passed what must have been top secret classified information to Schellenberger. Imagine if that's true.
Yeah,
That guy would be in jail already.
yeah,
The FBI would be on that so fast. I mean, you just admitted Congress has received these materials. Michael Schellenberger knows he's got these. It said I got these materials. That's a violation of I mean, that's several felonies. It's at least 2 felonies. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
espionage act, who knows what else. But I mean, so the fact that we haven't heard Schellenberger come out and say, hey, I've lost track of my whistleblower. I can't get in touch with him. Or even I did find out through an attorney that he's been arrested. The fact that we haven't heard anything like that makes me think either one, it's all BS, or two, it's purposefully being leaked by someone with permission, not necessarily that it's true. I'm saying that this potentially either 100% fiction story or partially fiction story, is being leaked for some reason. And if that were true, that answers a lot of questions. And there could be like what if they were trying, and I heard this, I read this in an article in the debrief. And folks, by the way, if you're not reading the debrief.org, if you're interested in UAPs, defense news, aerospace, that type of stuff, Micah Hanks, Tim McMillan, those guys at the debrief are freaking amazing.
Amen,
But
brother.
Tim McMillan wrote an article talking about this. And in the article, he's talking about a conversation with a government official. And in this conversation, they had exactly what I was just talking about. They had this idea that what if, instead of maybe saying, you know what, we've had this information, we've had this stuff for decades, maybe what if they wanted to say, well, just over the past few years, we've had this program. Maybe it's only the last decade or two, whatever it is. They want to make up a slightly different version of the story that's the truth, to kind of maybe make it a little more palatable, get the news out into the public, get people talking about it, get them acclimated to kind of some of these ideas. Doesn't mean the program is real, but maybe parts of the ideas in it are real, and they're trying to get this story out there for other ulterior purposes. Because I think if it were real and someone was actually divulging top secret, classified information about the most highly classified program in our nation, he'd be in jail already. And the fact that he's not just makes me really suspicious.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm leaning right now.
No, that makes total sense to me, because there is a process that people have to follow. We know that David Grush followed it with the
Mhm.
ICIG. He went through Dopser.
He was a real whistleblower.
He was the legitimate, genuine article.
This
We
guy,
don't we don't know about this guy, and what concerns me is something else that Jeremy Corbell hasn't come flat out and said it, but he's been insinuating awfully strongly by saying that this is the first salvo of catastrophic disclosure. And that's me paraphrasing, by the way, folks. That's not a direct quote.
yeah.
But Corbell is trying to sell it, at least the way I'm interpreting it, as this upcoming hearing on the 13th, and this article that Schellenberger released about this uh, alleged whistleblower who knows about this program, that it's kind of the beginning of catastrophic disclosure, because the UAPDA was shot down again. And so now people are like, well, you forced our hands, so now we're going to start leaking this stuff. And that comes along with a whole slew of trouble.
Mhm.
We can say, yeah, it's about time somebody essentially breaks the law, right? And potentially compromises, information gathering, intel gathering sources, and all kinds of things that we don't want not only our own country, our own fellow citizens knowing about, but we certainly don't want our allies and adversaries to know of some of these secrets and data collection methods that we have.
Yeah.
So catastrophic disclosure, on one hand, yeah, you can say you like the idea of it, but what is going to be the fallout? Now, it would be nice if the only fallout was, well, the charade and the jig is up, and these people that have been lying and covering shit up, their time to pay their due has arrived, and We're going to finally see karma coming back to collect. Um, I don't think that's going to be the case. If that's what, Corbell really is saying, and if that's what the new game plan is, what the new strategy is catastrophic disclosure. Um, Obviously, I want to know the truth of all this. We all do. But at the cost of sacrificing our own national security, no, I don't want that. And neither should anybody else, because there's a reason why we have to preserve this intelligence. These things, there's a reason why a lot of it is secret, why all of it is secret. So yeah, the whole idea that this program could exist is not much of a stretch for me, because there's precedent that shows, yes, there can be a program that, you know presidents are aware of, but the bulk of Congress is not aware of. Yes, special access programs, even unacknowledged special access programs, do and have existed. So the possibility of it existing is not really open to debate. It's possible that such a program does exist.
Mhm.
But look at the timing of it. Look at the fact that there's so much that just feels like something big is about to happen.
Mhm.
And what that could be, who knows? We've had
Oh, we have a
two
hearing
pres
coming up.
we've got a hearing coming up, we've got a presidential election, we've had two assassination attempts on a presidential candidate. I mean, something, it just feels like something big is building up to happen. And what that is, I don't know. It's just, call it intuition, I don't know. But this is not necessarily the path forward. As much as I would like to see the people that are allegedly covering this up and that have made this such a mess over the last 70, 80 years, yeah, I want to see them pay for it.
Mhm.
But at the cost of sacrificing so much, no, no, I don't want that to happen. And if that makes me a party pooper, I'll wear that as a badge of honor, because
Have you
I
ever
don't
read or heard of the Sedge Masters stories?
know.
Okay, so I have to remember where I don't remember where I heard about them, but there's a set of stories. If I remember right, it's three stories um, about it's fiction. Someone working in these types of programs, finding out there's reverse engineering, there's aliens are real, we have recovered craft, all that kind of stuff, and I can't remember who else it was, but someone in the intelligence community whose name I can't think of right now, but I had heard of, actively thought this seems like whoever wrote this actually was in this program. They've written it as fiction, but it's based on reality. I wonder if uh, this Immaculate Constellation document, this leak is something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
there isn't a single program called Immaculate Constellation that has all of these things in it. But
Right.
what if, this is pure speculation, obviously, what if there were multiple little programs and bits and pieces of this bigger Immaculate Constellation thing are actually true, but they are actually broken up into smaller pieces, smaller programs, maybe spread among contractors, different government agencies, military agencies, who knows what. But what if that's the case? What if someone is saying, yeah, we need to get this stuff out there, let's take bits and pieces of the truth and fictionalize it for whatever reason. Even that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not saying I think this is what's happening, don't get me wrong, because even that's like, why in the hell would you do
Right.
this? But I'm just trying to
Well,
think, what
well,
if someone is trying to get the truth out there,
that's an
trying to
excellent
figure
point.
out how to get the public ready for this, so they're just trying to expand the conversation to get some conversation going, and they're like slowly
Right.
getting toward, okay, folks, here's what the actual truth is.
Yeah.
The Immaculate Constellation is BS. Here's what's really going down. You know, who knows what.
Right. Well, George Knapp, if I'm not mistaken, and I think you watched the weaponized episode as well.
Mhm.
George Knapp, I believe, in that episode of Weaponized, said that he had seen that document himself, that Schellenberger refers to. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's where George Knapp's input on the whole thing was. But to your point, John, let's look at another similar type of storyline, the MJ-12, the Majestic 12.
Yeah.
That is also another aspect of this crazy field of ufology where you have two camps. You've got one group of people that say that the MJ-12 documents are absolutely legitimate, they're the real thing. And then you got this other camp that say, well, no, they're not, because this, and this doesn't match up. And these, documents in the 1950s and 1960s weren't classified in this particular type of a manner. So there's a belief that even though the MJ-12 documents as presented may not be legitimate, that there may in fact really have been and may yet still be an organization that functioned in that same capacity as the MJ-12 or Majestic 12 committee were organized to operate uh, in. So, yeah, it may not be called Majestic 12 or MJ-12 anymore, if it ever did exist, but it would make sense that something like that could and very likely would exist if all these accusations, all these allegations of there being a cover up are true. If people like David Grush and Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and all these guys are telling the truth about what they know. So, is it possible that Immaculate Constellation is just you know, just designed to, get the attention there, and then maybe there's actually maybe that's just, a similar instance where there's no real actual Immaculate Constellation program, but there's something else or several something else's, like you said, that are real, that do exist, and that it's so compartmentalized that one one group of people on the inside wouldn't know. I mean, we saw that with we've heard those stories coming out from of the UAPTF of being the Wilson Davis memo, right? Where Admiral Wilson is saying, okay, I'm seeing a list of these programs, and I want to know what you're doing in these programs. And they said, well, you haven't been read into them, so we don't have to tell you.
Mhm.
You know, Obviously, there's an awful lot of indication that that Wilson Davis memo is real, that that really did happen, and it would stand to reason, because if Wilson, even though he was the big chief at the time, if he wasn't read into these special access or unacknowledged special access programs, it doesn't matter if he's the president of the United States. If they don't want to read him into it, and if he doesn't have a need to know, he's not going to know. They're not going to tell him. That's just the way that the intelligence, that our military and whatnot is structured. At least that's my limited knowledge understanding of it. So, is it possible something like Immaculate Constellation could exist? Yes. Does it? The jury is out.
There's another scenario that's actually more plausible that I want to throw out.
Does it involve tacos?
It could, if you want it to.
Then I'm all ears.
No, but think about this. And this applies to the MJ-12 documents as well, because I think we pretty much know that those were not real, I think.
I don't think they were real.
So think about this. What if the fake MJ-12 documents and this Immaculate Constellation document is a counterintelligence move? It's
Right.
a honeypot.
Mhm.
They put this information out there with some juicy tidbits in it, looking to see if someone that's in some program that's adjacent to some of this stuff maybe would leak it. or if they think someone might be leaking other
Yep.
information,
Hmm.
they drop this stuff, put it in kind of a spot, put it somewhere that they'll find it, and then just see if they leak it.
Yeah.
And who knows? What if all of this immaculate constellation stuff is someone who's like, holy crap, this is amazing. The world needs to know, Jim. The world has to hear this. So they start
Yeah.
telling everybody they can. They talk to Michael Schellenberger. Somehow they get it to, uh, you know, George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell and the people that they know. And pretty soon, again, the self-licking ice cream cone
Right.
a circle of people who've heard about this document, and then a few of the really inside circle actually see the document and they're like, oh yeah, this is real. This is absolutely real. When maybe it's all BS
Hmm.
and it was just a
Well,
counterintelligence
and
ploy to try to
exactly.
hunt them.
I I
That would be more feasible and more plausible than some of the other things we've said. I don't know.
no, I agree.
I have no idea.
And it would not be out of the realm of possibility if this was just an attempt to submarine the entire quote unquote disclosure movement. Put something out there that obviously is going to get big news coverage like it has on News Nation, and that Ross Coulthart has covered it, and uh, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. So some pretty high profile media personalities, media and podcast personalities have reported on this, and it's got again, you get these people that want so desperately to believe in the extraordinary that they're willing to maybe place a little more faith in it than they should.
Mhm. And
Is
bam,
the and
someone
then
comes out. It's all fake.
and then it comes out proven that it's all fake. And then what does that do? It sets the entire thing back how many years? Because now the people that are in the mainstream that are just now starting to wake up to these possibilities, where the stigma about talking about these things has started to melt away, the people, if there really is a cover up, this is exactly the kind of thing that they would want to see happen. You seed it to where it is this big story, get all the big names to buy into it and to push the story, and then drop the hammer and prove that it was all a bunch of BS and it was all a hoax from the get-go.
Mhm.
And the mainstream public and the mainstream media are going to go, that right there is why we never paid attention to this and why we think it's all a bunch of bullshit.
They'll
It's
stop paying attention to it. And all the momentum
ex-
that has built up will be lost.
exactly. What better momentum killer? What better way to push people like Grush back into the shadows than to do something like that? And that's obviously something that's got to be taken into consideration by anybody that looks into this particular
Mhm.
little subject. So to wrap up, John, it's been an eventful an eventful couple of weeks, couple of months. Um, gosh, ever since July, my whole world has just kind of been busy nonstop with Phenomicon and everything that's happened since. Um, Quite obviously, we've got the big presidential election coming up in just 2 weeks. And the only thing that I'll say about that, folks, if I can talk very seriously, again, it doesn't matter to me which side of the aisle you align yourself with. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Constitutionalist, unaffiliated, whatever the case may be. Regardless of where you reside politically, I encourage all of you that are legally able to do so to get out and vote, because this presidential election, it's troubling to me how much we seem to hate each other simply because of which candidate we do or do not support. And I want you to remember one thing, folks. Words matter. The words that we use matter, perhaps now more than they ever did. And the way that you speak about somebody, and I in particular have to be really careful. And, if people felt that I went too far, and what I was saying about Greer or Sheehan or anybody else that I've said critical things of in this episode or in previous episodes, I genuinely apologize because my intent is never to offend. And oftentimes we're quick to anger, we're quick to be offended. But remember that everybody, an essential part of being in a free society, if we are indeed truly free, is the freedom of expression, the right to an opinion. Now, you can express that opinion, you can express your beliefs, but there's always going to be some modicum of fallout if you don't take some level of tact and decorum in how you choose to express your beliefs and your viewpoints. And I fail miserably at it all the time. So, really, what I'm trying to say, folks, is be nice to each other, especially to the people that you disagree with when it comes to politics. Because regardless of who wins or loses the election, whether your person wins or not, ultimately does not matter because we still have to live with each other in this country. And there's going to come a time when we're going to need each other, when you are going to need to have the support of those who hold opposing viewpoints to your own. And if you set out to burn bridges, and if you operate under that tribalistic viewpoint of my side is always right and your side is always wrong, you are setting yourself up to fail, and to fail gloriously. And I don't want to see that happen. And yes, I have my viewpoints that I hold. I'm not going to express what they are because those cards I play very close to my chest. They're nobody's business but my own. But I assure you, I am going to vote on election day. And I encourage all of you to do so as well. But remember, whether your person wins or loses, we are all still Americans. And we still need each other. And we need to remember that this nation was built on Americans getting over their differences, their petty squabbles and quarrels. Rise above whatever it is that makes you angry and just try to be better than you were yesterday, better than you were today. And that's advice that I try to take myself as much as I can. And I encourage all of you to do the same. And I don't mean to preach and get on a soapbox, but it truly breaks my heart to see so many of my fellow Americans hating on each other over things that ultimately, at the end of the day, in the greater scheme of things, when you look at things from an eternal perspective, none of these things matter as much as how we treat each other. And whoever the president is, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, remember that you have to be the president of the entire United States. You have to represent and support the people that didn't vote for you as much as the people that did vote for you. And I surely hope that that's advice that both candidates take to heart, regardless of who wins or loses, because we need a true leader that leads with the vision of lifting everybody up as much as they can and not trying to separate and divide each other. And anybody that encourages you to divide yourself from other Americans, don't buy into what they're selling. Be better than that. Again, rise above the things that make you angry and be the better person. It's not easy to do, especially now, especially with all the vitriol and rhetoric that's going on. It's hard to keep I have to bite my tongue and roll my eyes so many times every day with the shit that I read on social media. And remember, social media is a dumpster fire. Twitter and X more so than Facebook. But if you want to see the worst in humanity, spend just a few minutes on either Facebook or X, and you will see what I'm talking about. And sometimes the best thing to do is just take a break from it And, you know, it's easier said than done. I get that. But to those of you that are good examples of trying to rise above the things that anger you and to look past the differences that we have philosophically or religiously or spiritually or whatever the case may be, we always have more in common than what separates us. I firmly believe that. And I would rather build bridges than burn them. That's a talent and a skill that all of us, I think, need to relearn and be better at doing, because our opponents don't have to be our enemies. And that's where the problem lies, is that we choose to make more people our enemies than simply our opponents. Because an opponent, you can still shake their hand at the end of a hard fought contest. An enemy, that's a much more difficult proposition. So don't set out to make enemies, folks. And again, I know easier said than done, and I could probably be a much better example than I currently am or that I have been. But I'm trying, and I would implore and plead each of you to try to do the same thing. Be the better person. And that's all. And that's what I'll leave everybody with. John, thank you so much. You are awesome. It's always a great conversation that you and I have. Folks, if you liked any of what we talked about, hit that subscribe button somewhere down there, wherever that happens to be there, and hit that subscription bell and hit the like button to let us know that you liked it. Leave us a comment if you have to, if you have an opinion on any things that I talked about. Be nice, please. And check us out on Facebook as well. And again, folks, please join me in wishing Roger a speedy and complete recovery. Prayers and good thoughts and healing vibes to Roger and his beautiful wife Brittany. We're thinking of you, Roger. We miss you, and we can't wait to get you back again soon. John, again, you're awesome, and best of luck to your Broncos, man.
Say go Broncos.
Right on, folks. We will be back, John and I, and who knows, we'll probably bring some friends next time. We're going to have another episode in the not too distant future. But again, all the more reason to subscribe to the Soul of the Unexplained YouTube channel to be notified anytime we have new content. And we're going to try to be better about posting content more frequently than letting a full month and a half pass between our last podcast. So hope you guys enjoyed this, folks. And John and I will see you next time right here on the Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.